Yeah. What's going on, John? How you doing?
Well, I was going to ask off the top, were you ever a diary guy? Because I did the sort of like diary quote. Well, I don't know. I mean, you laugh, but like you did grow up in an era. You did grow up in a journaling / diary era.
Well, I'll tell you what. I have a box that has a bunch of papers. I never had a diary, but I would write stuff down on a piece of paper, shove it in a box, let it go.
Sure.
But like a lot of it is it's not it's literally a guy just saying exactly how he feels, which is a diary. That is a diary.
Yes.
But it is just like, it's not poetic or anything like that. And then
diary doesn't have to be poetic. Right. Often a diary is just like, here's what happened today.
And then after a while, it just turned into me saying I hate my parents. And it was just constant, like, I know for a fact in that box there is I had heard about Jim Carrey writing remember you heard about him writing that check to himself, like that $1 million check or whatever.
Classic,
and he was like, I'm going to be a millionaire in the end. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I wrote myself a little contract that said, when I get older and rich, I'm going to buy my parents' house and then kick them out. And then buy the next place that they want and then kick them out of that too. It's in there. I know it's in there. And I remember writing it. I was so mad at him. And I'm going to tell you why. It was just this fucking plan to
I love that the first part of that is really, because people, always say like, when I get rich, I'm buy my parents a house. But you're like, no, I'm going to buy their house and make them leave. Is very funny.
And it was because I was grounded and they wouldn't let me go to this girl's party. And I was like,
how old are you at this point?
16, maybe okay. 15, maybe 17. It's really right in that little sweet spot of like, fuck you. Yeah. I hope you die, you piece of shit. Like, I really hated their guts. I probably have the box in this room in the thing in it, but it was like, I even signed at the bottom. Like, sign my name. I mean, and this is
like
the most
a contract. Like, you're like, this is binding now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I tried to write. There's so much weird stuff in there. I tried to write a song like "Fucking Hostile" by Pantera. Mm-hmm. It wasn't good, and it didn't even come off like "Fucking Hostile," which is kind of like a Pantera masterpiece. And I'm like, I'm gonna write one of those actually. Like, I think I can write one of the best songs this band ever made.
Yeah, for sure. One of the best metal bands ever. One of their best songs. I could do that easily.
Well, and I also have little things in there about like what I wanted to do music wise. And I remember this is 19 years old. And I'm talking about, I want to make music. I want to make a heavy metal version of Usher. And the reason I wanted to do that is because Usher was really popular at the time, and so was heavy metal. I literally just was like, I want to do the two things that are really popular right now.
What would that even look like? A heavy metal version of Usher?
I used to say it all the time, and in my mind, I would try to do it, and I couldn't do it. And then, like, everybody's heard the Far version of Pony. Sure. I guess that's what I was trying to do.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? But in my mind, I'm not taking any kind of, I don't want anybody to think that I wrote anything close to Far's Pony. And in my head, I didn't hear that. I literally didn't hear any music in my head. I just knew there were two popular kinds of music at the time. If I could make both of them at the same time, I could be very rich and very famous. That's
and then
what
buy
I
your parents' house and kick them out of it.
Oh, yeah. Buy two houses, actually. They're going to have to take their third choice because I'm buying that motherfucker. Well, you'll be homeless.
Are they still in the house that you grew up in?
Nah. They've moved a few times because they've moved to Indiana for like 5 or 6 years or something like that. And then they moved back and they live in my grandma's old house. And I wouldn't buy their house and kick them out now. You wouldn't as like a mature father. No, if I had millions of dollars, I would not buy their house and kick them out.
Well, I do like the idea of that as well, that like you would buy their house and kick them out, and then I guess presumably you would live in the house. But if you're like rich, you wouldn't want to live in your parents' house in Groveport or whatever.
That house, yeah. If you saw a picture of the house, I could probably do Google Street View of the house for you.
Yes.
You fucking see it. Hold on, I will, because when you see it, you'll be like, why would anybody want that house?
But for you, it was the principle of it. It was making sure your parents were homeless. It wasn't the house itself.
That's exactly right, John. It was making sure that my parents were homeless so that I could get revenge on them for not letting me go to a party when I was grounded for having like a 0.0 grade point average. So
now, do you remember, like, did you want to go to this party because, like, was there a girl there that you liked? Okay, yeah, that's that. To me, it always, at that age, all the anger really just comes down to a girl or a boy or whatever, you know, wherever this podcast finds you at. It comes down to having a crush on somebody.
Oh, yeah. I sent you the link to the house I grew up in.
Okay.
And there were 7 of us.
I mean, I'm going to be honest, based on what Zillow estimates the price at, I think you could buy it now. If your parents were still in it, you could easily buy it and kick them out of there.
Not a good neighborhood. Not a great neighborhood.
So there was 7 of you living in this?
Yes.
Holy shit.
My room was the middle one on the basement, in the basement, closest to the front door. So you go from the left, and the bushes are in front of it. You go from the left, there was a room, and then another room. That was my bedroom, was the second one.
Right.
It had a window, and thankfully that whole area of the house was one. This is why I sleep really cold, John. That area of the house was one room, right? Yeah. And then they put walls in so that my brother could have a room and I could have a room.
Right.
So that we didn't have to share a room because we were fighting all the time and shit. And my brother is nasty. He's in there fucking doing whatever he was doing. He's just drawing Frank Thomas on the wall. It was very strange.
Like Frank Thomas, the baseball player?
Yeah, he literally drew Frank Thomas on his wall and wrote socks.
Okay.
And never painted it. But
I'll say it does look like the house has a nice yard. Like that front yard looks nice.
There's a crappy above ground pool up there. And yeah, we weren't allowed really to play in the yard.
Okay.
So, I mean, every now and then they'd let us play in the yard, but really we had to play out in the middle of the street. And then once we turned like 19, we were like, well, we're hanging out in the middle of the street. I don't know where else to fucking go. And we hung out in the middle of the street in front of the house, and they would call the police on us like every 2 days because we were too loud.
Like you're talking about when you're like a kid, like you're like
19.
Oh,
I'm like 18, 19 years old, so I don't have a curfew. I don't have to be in the house at any time. And I had been kicked out and moved out anyway. So I was coming to hang out in front of my house with my friends, and we were too loud. And they would call the cops. Cops would come and say, somebody called the cops. And we're like, we fucking know who called the cops. They call them every time. Never got arrested. It was just, but yeah, that house.
I mean, I could understand that. I'll be honest. If I lived and people were just like hanging out in the middle of the street at like 3 a.m, fucking drunk and high and smoking cigarettes constantly, I would probably also call the cops. You're acting like, I mean, I wouldn't now that I know more about what the police do, but you know what I mean? Like, I would not like that either. So I'm actually siding with your neighbors in this instance.
No, it wasn't my neighbors. It was my parents.
Oh.
They were who were calling the police. It was fucking crazy. They're calling police on us. And it was like...
So you were coming back to like hang out with your friends that still lived on the street?
Yeah. I had some friends that lived across the street.
Okay.
And they were really good friends, but you know, none of us were good. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So yeah, we were like hanging out in the street, being loud. We would get a big extension cord and a portable griddle and make grilled cheese sandwiches. Like in the middle of the street, we'd be out there fucking smoking weed. We'd be out there fucking calling restaurants and saying they fucked up our order so we could go and pick up because we didn't have any fucking money. We were running over each other with the car. We were fucking throwing rocks at each other.
Just wait, you were running each other over with the car.
We thought it was funny to run over each other's feet with the car. So when the car would go to leave, you'd stick your foot in there and go bump, and you'd be like, that's crazy. And we thought it was funny to punch each other in the stomach. And there was a light pole outside, and we always wanted to turn the light off because it's this fucking street light that is so much light, and it's late at night. And we're trying to do illegal stuff.
Sure, yeah.
So we asked this guy to climb up and break the light because he could climb like poles and stuff.
Sure, yeah.
So he climbs up, he gets to the top, and we just start throwing rocks at him.
You and I grew up
he's like, fuck you, and he's like yelling at us.
You and I grew up in very different worlds. I'll say that for sure.
Yeah.
When you were doing that, I was probably away at a curling tournament.
Damn, no, I didn't play any sports, man. I didn't have any. I literally had zero. It's funny that like I do a job now that people also do as a hobby, because like I do the Legos now, obviously, but at that time, I didn't have anything. Like my hobby would have had to have been doing drugs and throwing rocks at my friends and kicking each other in the nuts and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
getting in fights with people, like literal fights with people you hang out every day. And then you're playing spades or something, and somebody cheats, and you're fucking fighting them. And then an hour later, you're like, it's cool, man. You know, whatever. It was just it was a bunch of fucking dudes that were 19, 20, 18, maybe 17. And it was just a bunch of guys hanging out. It was a shitty neighborhood. It was boring. And none of us had money because none of us had jobs. So I get why I think about it now, and I'm like, I guess it would be very frustrating to have people in the street yelling all night, every night.
Yeah, it would be big time.
I live in the city now, though. Fucking people are loud all the time here.
Yeah, but that's different because they're probably like passing by. It's one thing if like people are loud is like they're walking by and they're loud. It's like, well, I don't love that, but whatever. They're going to be gone in a minute. It's not like these guys are outside cooking grilled cheese in the middle of the street and climbing the light standard.
I think they moved because I swear on my life, I think they moved because of that. Like
Your
when
parents.
they moved out of that place, that house I'm showing you, when they moved out of there, I fully believe they moved out because there was this kid I hung out with, and his name was Nate, and his mom, he was like, I'm going to go hang out. So I lived by a school called Asbury Elementary.
Okay. That's where Bam Bam Bigelow was from?
Yes. Okay. And he goes, I'm going to go hang out with my friends. And she's like, where are you hanging out at? And he was like, it's over by Asbury. It's like a block. She was like, oh, that's a really bad neighborhood. And it wasn't. And I think the reason I think it wasn't is because we were the people making it a bad neighborhood.
Right. Yeah. Like, what are you talking about? It's actually really great. I'm having a good time all the time. It's probably like how gangs feel. Like, oh, that's a really fucked up neighborhood. And the gangs are like, well, it's actually great. It's actually really good for us. People give us money. We rob people all the time, and we just get money, and it's fucking cool.
Yeah, it really was. It was such an eye-opening thing because it was like, what does she think goes on over there? And they're like, cars get broke into, windows get busted out in the school, and people steal the PA system and fucking all this stuff, right? And it's like, that was all us. So tell her not to worry because you're not going to get in anything because we're the problem. And,
right. Yeah. But I will say, whoever owns the house now, they should really get that siding power washed. That's a tough look.
I don't think it's been power washed since I lived there because it looks exactly like it did when I lived there. It is.
So maybe it's like permanent. You couldn't even get it off with a power washer then because it's the front. The front is quite moldy.
Yeah, it's probably something we did.
Yeah,
me and my friends did. But yeah. And my friends across the street, I wish you could see their house when it was before before they moved out, because they were the ones, their dad would build onto his house. John, he was constantly doing add-ons to his house, but he wasn't getting any permits. None of it was the code. And
he was doing it himself.
Yes, he was and making his kids help, but like he would just get he was always at the flea market, and he was always buying stuff. None of it was like, he bought a bunch of windows for a house, right? He buys like 12 windows or whatever. What are you going to do with fucking 12 windows? You know what I mean? Well, what he did was
I love the idea of buying windows at the flea market.
He did. He bought a bunch of fucking windows.
I believe you. I'm saying it's fucking crazy.
He had a shed full of birds, John. Like, he just had a shed full of birds, pigeons, all different kinds of birds, like birds that aren't supposed to be captive. But anyway, he would build onto his house, and he took those 12 windows and he lined them up on his deck and then put a roof on top of it and enclosed his deck and turned it into another room of the house and put a pool table in there. And it had to be the least up to code thing I've ever seen. There were no fucking walls on it. It was all windows. Yeah, he was so proud of himself. He got a pool
because he thought it was like a solarium. Basically, he's like, yes. I built a solarium, but like using these windows that are not solarium windows.
Florida room. He's like, I got a Florida room.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very strange. The guy was very weird, and like didn't have a backyard at all because
he had expanded the house out.
Yes, the house took up the entire backyard and the entire front yard. It was. And
did he ever get like caught? Like, did bylaw ever come and give him shit, or did they just?
You just don't really want to. You really don't want to fuck with Harry. I will say that. I think they were just kind of like, you know what, he's going to live in that fucking thing.
Right.
But
he's just going to do. Harry's going to do what he's going to do. Yeah. We can't stop Harry.
His name is Harry, but we called him Eddie. And he. Because he's Greek and he had like the accent and it sounded like he said Eddie and he loved it. But yeah, you just didn't fuck with the guy, man. And I think, if he was around now doing what he was doing, I think code enforcement would definitely sort of come down on him. But back then, I think like a person could have a reputation and everybody just kind of leaves them alone and let them do what they're going to do. You know what I mean? And I wish that was still like that now, but it is certainly not. So
no. Wow. I love when we just stumble into a slice of life from your childhood that we had previously not explored. I
was listening to tons of new metal outside when the cops would come at 3 a.m.
Oh, you had music playing as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can't hang out without music, John.
All right. So now it's making even more sense that the cops got calls. Like you're adding on. You're like, yeah, we also we would just set off firecrackers constantly.
Yes, we did do that a lot too.
Yeah. Okay.
We did.
Like, why were people calling the cops? We were doing all of these impossibly noisy things in the middle of the street at 3 a.m.
We were lighting each other on fire. There was this period where we thought it was cool to light each other on fire. And so somebody would just be standing.
But like how? Like
somebody would just be standing there? No, you get behind them and light their shirt on fire while they're standing there.
Like how would the shirt ignite?
You just fucking stand. It would be standing behind a person for a few minutes, not knowing that they know you're there, but they don't know what you're doing. And they'd be in a conversation and you'd just be standing there with the lighter on their shirt. And, it wouldn't go up in flames or anything. But yes, we used to light each other on fire quite often. We thought that was like the funniest fucking thing. We thought lighting each other on fire was funny. We also thought kicking each other in the back of the knees was like impossibly hilarious. Like you couldn't just stand anywhere because somebody would run up behind you and kick you in the back of the knees, and that hurts.
It hurts and you fold.
It sucks. That's how I am with the stomach punches too. Like now I know how to like sort of flex it. But I was thinking about this recently, man. Getting punched in the stomach when you're not ready is almost as bad as getting kicked in the balls, I think.
Oh yeah, it's a similar kind of like deep-seated queasy feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I hate getting hit in the balls. That fucking sucks.
I like that you say that like you're the only guy.
Hey.
I actually hate getting hit in the balls.
I'm doing an episode about guys that hate getting hit in the balls. That's crazy.
R/ I hate getting hit in the balls.